Hey everyone, Ben from Snowboard Gamer. I'm joined today by Gary for episode 2 of Board Game Stories. In this series, I interview someone, we talk about how they got into board games, what they like about board games, and I'm excited to have one of my subscribers on today. Welcome to the show, Gary. Thanks for joining.
No problem. Thanks for having me on, Ben.
Let's get right into the questions. The first one goes all the way back to your childhood. Did you play games as a kid?
Yeah, so I grew up in a big family. There was 6 kids, so we were always playing board games. I can remember playing like Uno, Candyland. I think the biggest game that we played is actually, I don't know if many people have played it. It's called Racco. I don't know if you.
Oh yeah, I played Racco with my grandma.
Yeah, we played. That's like I remember being like 7 or 8 years old when we were playing Racco. Like my whole family, we loved it.
Yeah, that's a fun one. My grandma had it, and I played every time we go over to her house.
Yeah, I loved Racco. So those were the biggest games I can remember from like an early childhood. And then as I got a little bit older, I mean, we'd play, my dad and my uncles, we'd play Risk, and then Acquire.
Oh, Acquire is one of our favorites. One of my friends introduced it to me when I was 19. It was the late 90s, early 2000s version with the 3D buildings. Is that the same one you have?
No, so I think my version, the family we play is probably from like the 80s. It's like you just have a little tile essentially showing which hotel you want to put down. Because I've seen like the nice new 3D versions, but no, ours is really old school.
Interesting. I think that game came out in the 60s. It was way ahead of its time.
Oh yeah, it's a blast. I still love playing it. I mean, it's different from most board games I normally play, but it's like one that's it always holds a place in my heart. And when I met my wife for the first time and we started dating, we were slowly talking about board games, kind of like, oh, what do you play? And she actually was like, no, I play Acquire. And I was like, okay, this is a match made in heaven, because I've never met anyone who played Acquire outside of my family.
That's awesome. That's a good segue into my next question. So you played all these games as a kid. What was it for you that got you into modern board games?
Yeah, so I would say the two classic, as I was doing research to it of various videos, it's like everyone talks about Settlers and Ticket to Ride, which were my two big ones. I probably started playing Settlers when I was like 19 or 20, and then Ticket to Ride maybe a year or so after that. And for a long time, those are the only two, you could say, modern board games that I played.
Yeah, we had a similar path. We played Settlers of Catan and Ticket to Ride a ton in the 2000s. Those are both great games.
And the funny thing is, I started playing Settlers with a group of friends, and then stopped. And then I met my wife, and we started playing Ticket to Ride. And she's actually never played Settlers before. It's one of the games I still need to get to play with her, because it's like what introduced me to board games. But definitely Ticket to Ride, I think, was the one we played for probably a good year. Probably actually 2 years strong was like the only game we would play.
We had a similar thing. We went over to my brother's house every weekend for probably a year straight and played Ticket to Ride. So what was it about that first game or two that really just drew you into modern board games?
Yeah, it was because I'm a big video game nerd. And so I kind of felt like there was some components of video games that I could see when I was playing Ticket to Ride. And so it was just the uniqueness of, it's like, oh, this isn't just your classic like card game. There was more to it. It was more involved. There was more strategy that you had to play around, which just drew me in instantly.
Okay, total side question here. You mentioned video games. What's your number one video game?
Ooh, of all time?
Of all time, yeah.
All right, I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna give you 2.
That's fair.
I do that a lot. Like all the questions you asked me, I'm gonna have multiple answers. I would say, so shooter, it's GoldenEye on the N64. Love GoldenEye.
Classic, yeah.
Yeah, and then probably Skyrim. I've bought and sold that game like on the Xbox 360. I probably bought it 4 or 5 times, and then would sell it back to GameStop, and then buy it again like 6 months later. And on the PC, I finally bought it. But yeah, I've put so many hours in it. I just love Skyrim.
Yeah, Skyrim's a great game. So I'll give you my number one. It goes all the way back to the 90s when we got our first computer, early 90s, and it came with the CD that had 2 games on it, Wing Commander 2 and Ultima Underworld. Have you heard of either of those?
No, Wing Commander. I've never heard of Ultima Underworld.
They had the original Ultima series, Ultima 1 through 9, and then they made Ultima Underworld 1 and 2. And Ultima Underworld 1 was made about the same time as Wolfenstein and Doom, some of the first 3D games. And this was a 3D first-person RPG game, and it was just awesome. And a lot of the developers have moved on to projects like System Shock, Thief, BioShock, and some of them were on Skyrim. So you can see a lot of the Ultima Underworld influence in Skyrim.
That's crazy. That's cool. I'll have to check it out then, because I've never heard of that before.
I think it's not uncommon for people who like video games to eventually get into board games. That same element of strategy that you deploy in lots of video games, you can take to the table and play with other people. So let's get back into the board game questions. What were the next games that you played after Settlers of Catan and Ticket to Ride?
So after that, I kind of stopped with board games. I started playing D&D with a group of friends.
Okay.
And so we played D&D for a little bit, and then I started listening to a podcast called Munchkin Land. And I started playing Munchkin, but the people I played with hated it. They did not. My wife hated it. She did not like how mean the game was that you could. And so we stopped playing. Let's see. I'm trying to remember exactly. We played Ticket to Ride from probably to about 2014, and then we really stopped playing games till like 2017, and that's when I'm originally from Arizona, and I moved to Utah to go to school. The company I worked for, one of the guys I've become really good friends with, we started talking about board games. And so him and his wife he was super, super into board games. And so we were like, okay, we'll come over on a Friday night and let's play some board games. And I was thinking literally like Settlers, Ticket to Ride. And he brought Betrayal, he brought Sheriff of Nottingham.
Oh, nice.
Resistance, and he brought one more, Zombie City.
Oh, okay. Now, I haven't played Zombie City. The other three are great games.
Oh, yeah. And so he brought those, and I immediately got hooked. I was like, oh, these are amazing. Like, what? And so then until we moved, so about 6 months, we had this every Friday night. Like, him and his wife would come over with another friend from work, and we would just play games all night.
That's awesome. I love hearing stories like that. To me, there's nothing like that first time when you experience it and you say, whoa, what is this? What is this world that I didn't know existed?
Yes.
All right, so we talked about your favorite video game of all time. What would you say your number one board game is of all time?
Number one board game, I think Betrayal. Betrayal House on the Hill.
Yeah.
I love the expansion. I even have the Betrayal at Baldur's Gate, but I think just the original Betrayal was like my first, I guess it was my you could say my rebirth into modern games after playing Settlers and Ticket to Ride. And I love scary movies, scary books, scary video games, and just kind of brought that element of like, oh, this is creepy, and then it's like you're doing teamwork for a little bit, and then it's complete randomness of like, still might be teamwork after the haunt starts, or then it's everybody, or it's a free-for-all, or one person. So I love Betrayal.
Yeah, Betrayal's a fun one. We play that every Halloween. It's a blast.
I keep telling my wife, like, we need to go find like a haunted house or go out to the woods on Halloween and like set candles up and just play in the middle of nowhere. She's like, no, she's like, that'd be too freaky.
So that's your favorite of all time. What is your latest crush? I describe that as the game that you're really digging lately.
Yeah, so I'll go with, I have 3 crushes right now.
Okay.
Number 3 is Coup. I was playing Coup for a really long time, and we still play every now and then, but I still love Coup. It's really fun.
Have you played with the expansion?
Yes. I haven't played where you're in factions. We've just played where you've had the Inquisitor.
Oh yeah, the Inquisitor is fun. I do like the team base, but you have to have 8 to 10 people for it to really work well.
My current group is about 4 to 5 people, depending on when my sister and her husband live out of town. So when they come down, then we have a little bit bigger of a group. I've heard like to really get the team / factions to work, you need a bigger group.
Yeah, I would agree. Okay, so Coup, what was next?
Okay, Coup. So the next game is Pooh. It's this.
I've seen that, but I've never played it. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, so it's really funny. It's a perfect game for kids. We have a lot of nieces and nephews, and so who are about like 9, 10, 11 years old. So it's a perfect game to play with them. It's a super simple card game. The whole basis is you're monkeys, and you're just throwing poo at each other. You have
flinging, right?
Yeah, you're flinging poo. Exactly, you're flinging poo. There's poos that have like different values. So it's like 1 poo, 2 poo. You can get up to 15 poos on you, and then there's a way for like the first 2 people to go out with 15 actually come back into the game. You can clean poo off yourself. Then there's like it's like called like special poos where you can throw poo at everybody, or throw if like let's say I'm throwing a poo at you, you can like block it with your neighbor, so essentially your neighbor take. And the cards are really funny, and it's a very like easy game to learn and to play, and so and it's just really fun, and we like playing it because it makes everyone laugh just because the cards are ridiculous.
Oh, okay. I'll have to try that one. That sounds fun.
Yeah. And then number one, I've only played it once, but it's a game that we like. My group, like we plan on playing just consistently, is Fury of Dracula, the 4th edition that just came out.
Oh, I've seen that before, but I've never played it. From what I understand, it's a pretty heavy, long, beefy game, right?
Yes, especially the first game. I think we had played our first game a couple of weeks ago, and it was 3.5 hours.
So what's the 30 seconds on the game? What are you trying to do in the game? Is it team-based? Is it individual?
Yeah, so it's 4v1. There's Dracula versus 4 hunters, and then the great thing about the game is that you can play up to 4 hunters, but if you only have 3 people, then one person will play 2 hunters, and you have a huge map of old Europe, and you're Dracula, and you're just moving around the board, and as you move from city to city, you are placing events that will eventually come to fruition, and you're trying to get influence points on the world. So the farther along the track you move, once those events come to fruition, then you might get points, or you might get more vampires to come help you. And the hunter's goal is obviously to track Dracula down and kill him.
That sounds really cool. I love games where there's asymmetry in the teams. Maybe it's one versus many, or maybe there's a traitor. Those are really fun.
Yeah. And the more you play, they'll introduce more rules to you, because when you're first time playing through, it's very basic. They want you to just get the base concept, but then they say, okay, as you play, here's more rules, new powers for Dracula that you can add into the game to make it more advanced.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So we talked about your favorite games. What about your least favorite game?
Monopoly. I think that's a lot. I mean, I don't know. For me, I feel like it's a lot of people. I can remember, we would get the itch to play Monopoly, and then we would start it. We'd go through like 2 rounds and just be like, why are we playing this? Like, this is the worst game ever. Like, literally. And so we would
tensions raise.
Like, immediately tensions raise. So I think Monopoly, I've only probably played an entire game 3 or 4 times, but I've started probably 15 or 20 of them. I just every time.
Same here.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were fights as games when I was a kid with my brothers. We started a lot of games, but most games we never ended.
Yes. So definitely Monopoly. And then it's like my family specific is Risk. Like, we get in huge fights when we play Risk. Man. Like, my older brother, my uncles, and my dad, like, the person who gets ganged up on in the end, like, always starts yelling at everyone else. Like,
oh, man. I can imagine.
I love Risk, but it's like I can't play with my family anymore because it just turns into fights.
Right. So you mentioned a couple and some kids sometimes. Who do you normally play games with?
So I have one group that we play kind of our more hardcore games with. That's like one of my best friends from growing up and his wife, and then our other friend. And then my sister and her husband, who live out of town while he's going to school. We whenever they come down, we always play games with them. So it's kind of like I have a more consistent group that's here, but then like my dad, my sister, my brother-in-law, my wife will all play games as well. And then when we have big family get-togethers, nieces and nephews will play fun little games like Pooh or Bears versus Babies will play.
That game's pretty silly.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit about what it is that you like about board games.
I think for me, it just really depends on the game. I do like the overall strategy of games. I'm a pretty competitive person, so I do like to play games that I'm trying to win, not just as a group, but individually.
Right.
So it's just like the strategy that comes behind it, trying to manipulate other people. So like, especially like Resistance and Coup, it's manipulation factor. And then just the strategy behind games overall, and learning and getting out of like, I love video games, but getting out of that video game environment and playing with other people and that interactive, because it's the perfect icebreaker with people. I feel like is playing, like, one of my favorite games to play with people is Resistance first time.
That's great.
Yeah, it's like you're gonna get to know someone really well as you play Resistance, and it's just that really great icebreaker.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. A lot of people who struggle socially, maybe they're not the extroverts, they're more of an introvert. Getting at the table and playing a board game, you have that game in between, and it really helps to develop relationships.
Yeah, definitely. Like the group that I used to play with originally back in Utah, we had a friend who, when I invited him for the first time to come play with us, we would talk a little bit, never like have like really great conversations, and then like it flipped. We played games, and then it's like, a whole new person came out, and then we became great friends after that. But it was just interesting to see that that change in him and us, like. Just that, it's a great icebreaker. It's a great way to get to know somebody.
I think you make a great point that board games help bring people together. I love that. Final question. So what game are you looking forward to playing the most over the next year?
I have two again. One is it's been out forever, but Gloomhaven. I've never played it. My dad is buying it because everyone gave him Amazon gift cards for his birthday. So he's like, I'm buying Gloomhaven.
Nice.
So again, an older game, but never played it before. So really excited about that. And then I'd say a new game that's coming out is I just probably as of like 6 months ago, like learned about legacy games. So I mean, I know Pandemic is a big legacy. I got the Betrayal legacy version. I was just reading there's a Machikuro legacy.
I saw that. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, so I don't know how they would do it because I mean I love Machikuro. I think it's like an advanced version of Splendor, and so I'm interested to see how they introduce legacy elements into that game because the other games I can totally see how. I mean, Betrayal is really easy. You're building this house from 200 years ago. Pandemic, I've heard, is a real smooth transition. Risk, even legacy, but I'm like, how would they do a Machikuro legacy version? But I'm really excited for it.
I'm definitely going to get that when it comes out. We played a lot of Machikuro over the years. It's pretty much been replaced by Space Base, though. Have you heard of that?
I've heard about it from you.
Yeah. I still like Machikuro, though. It's a great game. And Legacy? Very intriguing.
Yeah. So I'd say that's probably like a new game that I'm very interested to see.
Well, cool. That's all the questions I had. Anything else that you want to say to the audience about board games?
I love board games. As much as I try to support local board game stores. I know it's so easy to get on Amazon, usually cheaper, but that's one thing I've recently started to do is like, okay, I'll spend a couple extra bucks because just creating that, again, I'm from Arizona, outside of Phoenix, and there's not a lot of board game stores here. So that's what I try to do. It's like, okay, there is a small environment where I can try to help cultivate board gamers. Because when I was in Utah, it's everywhere. There's tons of board gamers. It's really cool. And I came back to Arizona. I'm like, oh man, there's nobody here. And so I realized, okay, one of the ways that I can at least try to help influence that or provide a base for that is to support local board game stores. So that's what I've been trying to do recently, even though, again, usually spend a couple extra bucks. But for me, it's worth it because it's like I meet people there and I get recommendations for games, potential groups to go play with eventually.
Very cool. Thanks for bringing that to light, Gary. I think that's very important to support the local board game stores. I go down to the Wizard's Chest all the time, talk to the employees there, hold the games, look at them, get recommendations. In fact, that's where I got the recommendation for Space Base, was from my favorite employee at Wizard's Chest, Sam. He recommended that, said, oh, this game's really cool, you gotta go play it. So I did.
And that's the cool thing. That's what I realized too, is that you go in there and yeah, I can read a review or watch videos of people playing, but then you actually talk to someone. You can get like real in depth. Okay, like would this be a game I would enjoy? Have they played it before? And so that's what I've been. And I've been like, okay, I'm Googling places and I'm trying to go drive to places when I have a minute for a break on work. I'll go drive to like a place a few miles down the road just to introduce myself and see what they have and get introduced to new games too, because it's like my way to search for games is literally just trying to find YouTubers and watch different videos and get introduced to games. But someone, here's my personal recommendation of a game, that's really cool.
Yeah, I like that. So I have to ask you, when you go out of town, do you go out of your way to try and visit local board game stores and check them out?
Yes. Like, it's like...
My wife thinks I'm crazy.
Like, whenever I go, it's just like, I just want to see what they have. Maybe they have something I've never seen before.
Right. You have to.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, 100%. Like, I was like, all right, hey, we got to make a stop real quick. She's like, where are we going? I'm like, don't worry about it. And I just end up at a game store.
Okay, cool. Thanks for joining us today. This has been a fun time doing Board Game Stories Episode 2. If anyone else out there is interested in joining, just shoot me a message and you can come on here and we'll talk about how you got into board games. Thanks for joining today, Gary.
Thank you, Ben.
And thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you next time.